Today with me is Chris. Chris, say hi.
Hi, Chris.
And Chris, you want to introduce our guest, or will our guest introduce himself?
I think our guest can introduce himself.
Oh,
Oh,
I
I
didn't
didn't
realize
realize
it
it
would be
would
this
be
kind
this
of
kind of
show.
show.
Um,
My,
my name is Adriean Koleric. I'm a comic creator, and I am based out of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I don't know how far this reaches, so I thought I'd just, you know.
yeah, we don't know
It
how far it
reaches,
reaches either.
yeah,
It
it reaches
yeah.
to this show. At least we know that, right?
There you go. So apart from like, get my home address, that's where I'm at. Yeah. Cool. So, I mean, I checked out some of your work. I know your work. I'd seen it before.
Hmm.
And the one thing I will say about your work is, of all the artists I know, you're the least afraid of using black of any artist that I know of in the world, I
It's funny you say it, 'cause I thought I was always afraid of using black. Like I'm trying to do more of it, I guess, right? So like when I first started doing like my first comic, I uh I got my first review from I forget who it was, Comical Opinions or something like that. And he absolutely slammed my ink work at the time. And that was like 4 years ago, and I've been obsessed with trying to get better with ink work. And then I think it's like slowly kind of going into the darkness, I guess, but I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there. So,
think.
no, but which is
Yeah.
great because, I mean, with the digital age and stuff, people are thinking more and more color.
Yeah.
Where this one other artist I talked to, he was saying, don't you, we were talking and he goes, don't you just love old school black and white comics? And that's why for our new book, we went black and white because I miss those days because you think color, and you're cornered in that area where, like, I'll give you an example. Like Chris, if you're, what was it, Tales from the Spoon cover, and like
Yeah.
blacks in that, oh, love that.
That was amazing. Like
Y-
just and like to me it's a sphere of black, but I almost feel like you carve white out of your black sometimes.
Yeah, that's so yeah, so we're talking about the Tick bootleg.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
The Revenge of the Spoon.
um
Revenge of the Spoon. I'm
the Revenge of
sorry.
the Spoon,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
it's funny. So when I first came up with the idea, it was after seeing like bootleg Spider-Man by Monty Khan. And I'm like, I gotta do a bootleg, right? So what bootleg am I gonna do, right? So I'm like, I'll do the Tick because I grew up on the Tick. And I did a cover first before doing anything else. And then by the time I did the book, I look back at the cover, I'm like, this cover stinks, right? And so then I just I don't know what it is. I'm just trying to like I find with my three press books, I'm and whenever I do sketch covers, I'm really into portraits. And so trying to incorporate that and again too, trying to dive deeper into like, getting more heavy inks. And also like now when I'm doing covers, like I always think like, I gotta be able to see it from across the room. And if it like jumps out at me, like right away, then I know I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I noticed your stuff is really bold. Like I almost think like some of the pages that I saw of some of your work could almost be covers in themselves because they are just this like every single thing is just this like striking image, and I think that's really really cool.
Yeah, I for the first series, I did a five-issue series called Jacoby the Slav with No Remorse, and it was published through Scout Comics, and yeah, I've just always been into color, right? Even prior to I used to I did street art for a couple of years. I designed furniture for a few years too, I was always like dealing with like a bold color palette, right? So it's just kind of always been my thing. And I use the color too to kind of sort of like make up for really crappy line work as well, right? So in the furniture design world, it's like, you make the most simplest of whatever boxes, you paint it red, and it just like absolutely elevates it. So I've always kind of had that mentality. It's like just hide it behind a splash of red, and then, I should be okay.
That's really
Oh, that's a
cool.
great that's a great idea.
I love the fact that you have these like other artistic sort of ways and you almost incorporated your comic book thinking based on, that sort of thing. There's not too many artists that are like that because a lot of guys just sort of start off either in animation or in
Mm.
comic books and sort of have already got that sort of the tools that are from the previous, but the sort of furniture design and how to like think color and bring that into comic books is really neat, interesting.
Yeah, thanks. I've always been into comics, right? So like I was in high school in the late 80s, early 90s. So I was there at the time of the whole Todd McFarlane, Spider-Man, that whole era, right? And so I always knew I was going to do a comic, but I did everything else instead of comics, right? So it took me like, I don't know, 20 some 30 years to finally do a comic. And it's funny, it's like I'm not a traditional comic guy. Like I collect comics, I read comics, but I don't dive into comics, So I think I kind of got this like almost like an advantage where it's like I'm not stapled to like, any traditional norms, I guess. Whatever. So I'm not preoccupied with like, whenever I write a comic or draw a comic, I'm not preoccupied with, fitting into certain tropes, right? In the comic world. So yeah, and I also too, it's funny, it's like there's someone told me it's like once you start making comics, you stop reading comics. And it's
Yeah.
it is so true. I mean, I got
It
my
is.
read
It is.
my read pile is disgusting right now. And so whenever, and I've had people like email me like a year later, like, hey, I finally read your book. I'm like, of course you finally read my book, right? So it's like, and I totally understand.
Was there a comic that sort of brought you in a little bit? Like, was there something that inspired you to sort of went, hey, wait a minute, I should actually do this?
Yeah, so it was a couple, you know what? Actually, it was the Chip Zdarsky Daredevil run
Oh,
that got me
really?
back into comics. It was the funniest thing. So I got this one comic shop, Comic Fever, that I passed by every day at work for like the last like 20 years. And but by that point, I just stopped collecting comics. Right? I haven't collected comics, prior to since like I don't know, early 2000s. Anyway, so I passed by it and I see the poster for the cover for issue one for Zdarsky Daredevil, and it just right away hit me. And then the same time House of X came out, and it was that whole redesign of Xavier, right, with the big helmet, and the big X. I was just like, so both those two comics just all of a sudden just got me into the door. I started a pull file. I collected both, and then just kind of went from there, right? And then I just the world opened up to me about what other independent comics are out there, and then books like Something is Killing the Children came out that I hopped on right away, and yeah, and then from there. Then I did my first Edmonton Expo, but I did it like with artwork and all that, just prints, right? And it was a horrible weekend, so I just decided to start writing a script. This is like 2019, and yeah, and then a year later, I just did a Kickstarter, and then that's kind of sort of like launched everything from there.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
wow.
That's really cool.
Wow. So, looking at your cover art you're doing for the sketch covers. Oh,
Mhm.
love those. Love seeing those.
Thanks.
And I mean, I know you're doing pencil work. I mean, Chris and I always talk about this, and one of our buddies, also Tommy Yo. I don't care about the final product. I care about the pencil stage. See how the person, you know, how many pencil marks, eraser marks are on that thing,
Yeah.
and because you want to see the creative process.
Mhm. Yeah, it's funny, like I always like try to show like the process, right, with everything I do, right? It's so because it's always nice, like to have people kind of watch as you go, and then because by the time the final product hits, like I always feel like that the people that were following and whatever the process, like they have a bit of ownership now into like the
Yes.
final thing, what I mean? Because they've seen it from basically from the first hand sketches to whatever, right? And then by the time that they get the book, right, it's like, they've invested somewhat, some of their time into it. So, but with the sketch covers, it's nice because, it's a way to kind of keep loose. It's all hand drawn and then hand inked, right? Where like the comics are all, I do it all on a tablet. Just because I'm getting older and I just like, I need to zoom, it's just it really, yeah, it's just a lot easier, less paper too, right? It's good for the environment, right? But yeah, the sketch cover's been a nice thing. So yeah.
Is
That
there a
was my
particular character that you love doing for sketch covers? Is there
No,
something that
it's honestly, it's all over the map. Yeah, it's funny. It's like uh, someone there was this whole thing about AI art, and then someone this is on Twitter, and I still call it Twitter, and some artist commented saying, "How is it different to sell other people's IPs at expos and cons and stuff like that, right? Like people do fan art, right? That's really it's
yeah.
fan art." and I don't know what it was. All of a sudden, I was just like, damn, should I be doing this? You know what I mean? Also, I felt guilty about, doing other people's IPs, right? And then, but I then I realized I put out a bootleg comic on someone else's IP, so I really got no leg to stand on. Um, but
I,
yeah, no, I just like to. There's no one person I like to draw.
although, I would say with the Tick, just to give you some ease, to some degree, the Tick is a bootleg of a bunch of other comic books anyway. So you're really
Yes,
doing a bootleg of a bootleg. So
yes, I know.
you're
There's that
okay.
one comic. Was it Meta Man or something or?
Mega Man, isn't it?
Mega Man, Mega Man, yes. So Mega Man came out a couple years beforehand. It's pretty, you know what I mean? Apart from like it's pretty well, yeah.
Yeah. And
So
Mega Man is that's Eric Larson, I think, isn't it? He did
I,
the Mega Man stuff early on,
I
or he
don't
was
know.
involved with it.
It's funny because
I'm
I
think
didn't. Yeah, go ahead.
I would think it's Scott McCloud for
Was it
some
Scott McCloud?
reason.
Maybe it was Scott McCloud. Yeah.
I didn't discover Mega Man until like honestly this year. So my daughter works at a shop called Game City here in Edmonton, and so they got like video game stuff, but they also got a little comic section. And I was kind of flipping through like the miscellaneous section. I found this comic. I'm like, this is a tick off, right? But right, I was so drawn to the cover and the artwork. Like that's the type of artwork that I'm drawn to, right? Like that's kind of what I grew up on, right? Like as much as I like the Marvel DC artwork, like I'm really into like that kind of more stylistic, whatever. And then I just flipped through it. I just loved it. Like the stories are kind of hokey, right? Almost like, Tick stories are kind of hokey as well, but the artwork was just, fantastic. So, and then I looked at the year, I'm like, holy crap, this came out before, well before the Tick. And it's like, oh, so yeah, that did make me feel better about doing the bootleg. But it's funny when I was first starting to do the bootleg, I contacted someone got me into contact with somebody that actually worked on a Tick comic like legally, and I mentioned this project, and at first they're like, yeah, okay, that's cool, blah blah blah, and then eventually like the conversation turned to like, well, how would you feel if someone did a bootleg of your property, right? You just kind of make me feel guilty about it. I'm like, oh crap, and then I was like, screw it. It's funny. I'm kind of getting to that age where I just don't care, I guess. And then, but there's so many bootlegs out there, right? And it's such a big part of comics, and just to kind of,
Yeah.
to that actually be able to like, contribute to that part.
And sorry, not to defend that, but not to defend it, but you're not mass producing and selling, thousands and thousands of copies on distribution.
No,
I
I
mean,
I made 200 copies of it, and which
Yeah.
is
and
it
there you
was
go.
funny. Yeah, and there was a printing error on this run of 200, right? It's a minor printing error, but it was enough for me to go back to the printer and say, hey, there's a printing error, kind of whatever. Can you do something for me? So they shipped me like another 200 copies of this book. It showed up all damaged. They're all damaged. So I got it. So it's a sign. It's a sign.
It's a
Uh,
sign saying
I
stop.
got a box of 200 damaged Tick bootleg comics. I don't know what to do with, right? So I don't know if I can press them to get rid of the whatever, but it's just, it's kind of funny. The karma's kind of there. So I might one day just package them up as like, I don't know, war-torn bootleg or something, and come up
No,
with
but you know what? What you just said, for me, I see it as, you know, there's what you call inspiration or tribute to that creator or that comic. You're not doing it, to make a buck off of it. Yes, you want to make your printing costs. Let's be honest with that. But
Mm.
overall, you're not wanting to sell thousands of copies and make a career out of, doing a bootleg, kick comic or something. You're doing it because you love the artist and the product, and it's
Mm.
a kind of tribute to it.
It is. And it's funny too. It's like, I think comics in general, you're not really looking to make a profit because you're not going to make a profit. You kind of realize that very quickly, right? So it's just sort of it all kind of works out. But yeah, no, it was just one of those things where I remember, and one of the catalysts of doing the bootleg was like, so I was reading like this one of the later Tick books, and the story was so awful. I'm like, my Lord, come on. Like, we could do better than this. And then, so I'm like, well, how can we do better than this? I'm like, well, let's murder Arthur and let's go from there, right? And so I murdered him, and then I kept it to like 20 pages, right? Which is and I did this book in 2 weeks because I
Oh
needed something.
wow.
I know it was absolutely nuts. So I needed something in time for Montreal Comic Con, right? So I wanted something new. So I just like hunkered down and I had like loose pages and all that. And I just like completely just whatever. And it being black and white too kind of like helped speed things up as well. And so I kept it simple as hell. And I contacted the printer. I'm like, how fast can you get this back to me? And it was just this whole, just kind of one of those things. It's not going to happen again, that fast. I want to do another. I have to do a follow up because
No, but
I,
sometimes having a deadline like that will make spark the creation and say, you know what? Instead of me trying to waste time and twiddling my thumbs, trying to figure out how to write this story, draw this. If you just go in the mindset, I have to finish by 2 weeks, you're just
yeah,
going to draw, and write as you draw.
it's amazing. It's almost like that. You guys ever see that movie Old School with Will Ferrell and
Yes.
where it's
Yeah.
it's the scene where Will Ferrell's doing the debates and he sort of like just checks out and he just like just flows, right? Just like he's just out of it. It was that kind of moment. At the end, I'm like, okay, right? So, um, yeah, yeah. So it's funny. I always tell people when they come to the table, I'm like, it's a smash and grab story, which means it's like it's an in and out story. You're gonna read it in like 5 minutes. Like
Yeah.
it's not. This isn't The Watchmen. You know what I mean? This is just. It's like a beefed up pamphlet, I guess. Even though it is 20 pages, but you'll get through it pretty good.
Beefed
I
up
mentioned,
pamphlet is a great way to describe independent comic books on the
Pretty
whole.
well.
yes, that's it. Yes. It is. That's perfect. So you mentioned movies, seeing your post all the time. Wow, you have a big DVD collection.
It's not that big. I think I just kind of take pictures at a certain angle, so it looks big, right?
Oh, okay. It looks
So
like you have shelves full of DVD. You look like Blockbuster.
you know what? It's funny because we have, I mean, we have the streaming services and all that, but it got to a point where like, you want to watch a certain movie, and it's like, oh, I remember it was on Prime. I go to Prime, it's not on Prime anymore. It's behind a paywall. So then you go to like whatever, you go to whatever, and then like there's Tubi, right? But Tubi's got commercials. It's like I got tired of like just searching and hunting. And then I just thought, you know what? I'm gonna just start buying DVDs again. And so we just, we started going to like, just like Valley Village, whatever. And then we do like, weekend trips out to the country, like to some of the smaller towns, and we hit up their thrift shops and we buy like 50-cent DVDs and yeah, I just kind of
That's
sort
the
of
great part. Yeah.
yeah, it's fun. And I got into like the last year or so I really got into horror movies. And the one thing I'm finding with horror movies is like, man, those DVDs are not cheap, right? And they're not easy to find, right? Some of these movies. And yeah, so I don't know, it's just and the family's kind of into it now too, you know what I mean? So I don't know, it's just kind of I think it's actually like it feels like it's sort of a trend right now too. Like I'm seeing more and more people talk about, investing more into physical media, right? Because people just kind of want to get off the grid a bit and, you know, self-contained.
Well,
Well,
actually,
also,
to go up on that, Disney has actually started to. They've always been releasing DVDs, like they've continued to release DVDs, but
Mhm.
now they actually have dates for their streaming and physical copy.
Yeah.
Like they actually announce it now. They've started
oh wow.
in the last year or so. They've actually started to announce their physical media release date again.
Hmm.
So it's like I think that there's enough interest that people are actually going, yeah, I kind of just want to own this DVD. So
Plus,
it
Yeah.
makes
also
sense.
owning the DVD. I know some of the movies I watched on streaming services and whatever, they don't have, a lot of them don't have behind the scenes content,
Hmm.
which is sometimes, some movies you want to watch the interviews and, you know, you know, like for example, Lord of the Rings. I watched that 3 hours of the behind the scenes stuff, 9 hours of the movie and I watched 3 hours of behind the scenes stuff, which
And we're
was
talking about
great.
the ending at the Return of the King, right?
Yeah.
I've actually seen Futurama more times with the the commentators on than I've seen
Yeah.
it without. So
What's nice about DVDs too is like all of a sudden like I've started seeing movies that were not edited, right? So I'll give you an example, like so Roadhouse, like the Patrick Swayze masterpiece, right? I only watched it, honestly, I only watched it like when it showed up on AMC. And so I finally get a hold of like, I buy the DVD copy, I watch it, and there's that scene where he rips the throat out of a guy. I'm like, oh my God, right? And it's just like, so it was like I was watching a new movie, right? Like a director's cut. And so that's been like, I've really been enjoying that. It's just like, just seeing like, a proper, whatever. But it's been great too. Now, friends of mine now were like, talking about swapping DVDs, one of my collaborators, he showed up, he dropped off this one French horror movie I got to watch. And so it's kind of, slowly turning into a bit of a trading card kind of thing.
So,
No, which
so
is
do the
great.
movies,
Which
do the movies actually affect your comic book? Have you seen crossover into that?
Yeah, what's funny? So whenever I start writing a story, I always like right away just envision like a scene in a movie. You know what I mean? I just whatever. I always have like a song play in my head, and then yeah, that's usually how I write. Because again, too, it's like not being a big comic book reader. You know what I mean? So I don't worry about how it's done through there. But yeah, that's just my process, right? Which was it's funny because like when I first started getting into writing comics. I was so obsessed with how to write comics, right? So I would look up certain, I just Google like how to write a comic, how to make a comic, right? And I get to all these little, sites and all that too. And guys had certain formulas, it's like, well, make sure you start off with, your splash page, and then page two should have four panels, and then five, six, three, two.
yeah, see,
So it was
then
like,
yeah,
what? And I would try to do this, right? And then, and then it'd be like, well, you got to have like the big paper and you got to blue line it. I'm like, okay, I'll
that's
blue
yeah.
line it, right? Not really realizing, well, what do I do with the blue lines, right? And so it got to the point where it's like someone somewhere mentioned just do it how you want to do it. And I'm like, I don't know what it is. And all of a sudden it's like I got rid of the big pad and the blue lines, and I just like I took like photocopy paper from the recycle bin at work and I just flipped it over and I just drew everything out. And then I just scanned it. I brought it to Photoshop and I just sort of moved things around, my sketches, and then I just drew over it. And then it got to a point where I just came up with my own system, and then it just
The
kind of
sad thing is nowadays with the access of internet, you have all this information on how to create something, but it's too much information. And I'll give you an example. When I went digital years back, I downloaded, I watched so many videos on digital tablets, pens, everything, brushes, same like you. And I downloaded, no joke, hundreds of brushes to ink
yeah.
and tried every one of them out. And so my buddy, who's been using digital tablet years before I have, I go, "What do you use?" He goes, "I use the default one that the program gives me." And
I do
I'm
too.
using, yeah,
Me
and I'm
too.
using that
Yeah,
one now. I'm
yeah,
still
I do
using
too.
that one for years. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
like you, when you read online or listen to people, they'll tell you use this brush, that brush, and it's like it's too much information.
Mhm. It
Yeah.
is. It's overwhelming. I think the only brushes I really download are like blood splatter because I just got outside to draw blood splatter, right? So yeah, it's just and it's funny. It's like that's a nice thing too. But when you start doing cons and expos, when you're in the creator rows, like you got a lot of people coming out, young people too, and they always have a lot of questions, and they're like, yeah, I looked up so and so, and I've been trying to whatever. I'm like, just do what you do, do what you're comfortable with.
That's
Yeah.
it. Yep.
Because I would too that it's like, if you stick with what's comfortable with you, then all of a sudden you're going to develop your style. So like we got enough Marvel and DC artists, right, that are fantastic, and they're great, right? We all grew up on that, right? But I got enough of those guys, right? So I need new things. I need something different. So
Yeah.
And
One of
that's
the
what I've been.
best pieces one of the best pieces of inspiration I ever got was I was an animator. I worked in an animation studio before, and I decided to do a little film, like just a little indie film. It actually did okay. I put it in the sort of indie film circuit, and but the piece of advice I got while I was making it, I was talking to this guy who's a director. He's done all kinds of TV shows and films, and I said, he was sort of mentoring me, and the best advice he gave me was the difference between a filmmaker and a wannabe filmmaker is a film.
That's actually that's actually fantastic advice. That's actually really good advice. Yeah, it's like I used to always tell people, I'm like, just knock one out, knock one book out. Doesn't have to be that much, right? Or do try to hook up with someone and that's making an anthology and maybe get a page in there. You know what I mean? Like just yeah, because once you do that one, you'll know right away. You'll know if this is what you want to do, and then it'll snowball from there, right? So, but Yeah, that's exactly. Even if the film's crappy, you're still a filmmaker.
Yeah, and then you'll do your next one. I mean, because your past one will not be as good as your next one, no matter what. And so that's how you do it. It's not like this great thing where you suddenly you have this beautiful piece of work.
Yeah.
It's you have it's crappy, it gets better, 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 better. And I'm sure Jack Kirby at the end of his career was still like,
Yeah.
I can do better.
Imagine
That's what,
that.
yeah, each project you try to do better than the previous one. And it's funny too. It's funny you kind of mention that because there were times where it's like um, you want to go back and you want to like redo things. You know what I mean? So like with my 5 issue run with the Jacoby run, it's like I want to eventually do a trade because like with Scout with their standing financial and whatever wise they're not going to put out a trade. So my contract ends next year, so I'm going to probably do it on my own. So I keep like thinking, should I go back? Should I go back and you whatever? And
No,
then
you know what? This is advice my friend Tom Yo gave me when I was doing collecting my trades. He
mm,
goes, "Don't pull a George Lucas."
I've heard this too. Yes, I've heard this too. And it's funny. He's like, oh, it's right, right? Because I always think about that scene where, where Han is like stepping over Jabba's tail. I'm like, ah, don't do that, right? That's yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah,
you know when you collect, let's say your first issue, you start editing the first issue and redoing it. Next, you know, you spent 4 months doing the first issue again.
yeah.
I mean, it's probably you're probably thinking I better redraw the whole thing
Yeah, I've had moments of madness where I'm like, I should just redraw this thing, right? But it's funny then, but then it's like my nature kicks in where it's like I've never gone back to things, right? So like I've done like like street art, collage art, furniture, blah 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 blah, and I've never gone back to those mediums, right? Like with street art, it's like you're used to just giving away things and moving on, right? That's really what it is. You're just abandoning things in the streets, right? So I'm kind of like that with comics. Is like, I kind of want to go back and fix it. But I'm like, do I really care? I don't care.
now.
Don't care.
One of the other reasons I would suggest not going back is think of it as being a great teaching tool for somebody for a younger reader to sort of see an evolution
Mhm.
and see it get better. And then they know too, again, we go back to the same thing, where they know that if their first book sucks, as far as they're concerned, they know that maybe the next one's going to be a bit better, the next one's going to be a
That's
bit
it.
better. And so when you see artists do that, it's such a nice thing to have this sort of like to see a progression in art. Like even when I look at artists, I love to see that progression because then I go, okay, this person used to suck and now they're amazing.
Mhm.
So when my stuff kind of sucks, I know it's going to get better.
So for your sketch covers, have you went to the store and said, I've never read this comic, have never heard about, but I want to do a sketch cover on it?
Yeah, yeah. I just this bought just well because it is a sketch cover. I just grabbed it, right? So no real reason. And then sometimes too, like my shop will just like put stuff off to the side for me and just say, hey, we thought maybe you'd enjoy kind of drawing something on such and such cover. So
So
nope, no no specific reason.
which one was the most interesting one and you had fun with that you've never even heard of the character or, you know?
Um, that's a I
Yeah.
did I forgot what the title of the comic was. It was like the old Universal Monsters, and but I forget what the I can't remember what the title was. Was it Hyde Street? No, it wasn't Hyde Street. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. Anyway, so some guy wanted me to draw the Frankenstein monster, right? Which I've never done before, kind of thing, right? So that was kind of cool, right? Because that's what I was doing mostly color for the covers, right? So I was able to kind of play with like the patchwork and all that, and yeah, so that was kind of cool. And then this one guy kept having me draw like Spider-Man related stuff. Um, so that was cool. He'd show up at, like every expo, right, with a new Spider-Man, whatever. So yeah, no, not really. Yeah, just kind of all over the map.
We've
Oh,
talked about this on our podcast a few times. We talk about just like doing doodles, and sometimes we try and think of characters that we love to draw, but would never read. Like we tried to read the comic and it sucks. Like for us, Firestorm was a big one. Like it's like a great character to draw. It's so much fun to draw, but if you try and read one of those comic books, it's like it's torture. You
You
know?
know, I've always had that relationship with Dazzler, I guess.
I agree. Yes, Dazzler's
It's just like the
yeah,
character design was really cool and all that, but my God, the comic was horrible. Like
horrible. Yes.
just awful to read, right? So yeah, and I was kind of like that with the like my all-time favorite like comic book character is Spider-Woman. I love Spider-Woman. I love her design. I love everything about it. But I always find it's like her first run, man, there was some real clunkers in there, but there's some really good stuff in there. Um, yeah, so she's kind of one I got a love-hate sort of thing with. Yeah.
Or
I
her
find that
old costume was great.
What's
yeah,
that?
Spider-Woman's old costume was great.
Oh, it's yeah. Yeah, and the what was her name again? Carla Pacheco? I think that's her name. She did that run like a few years ago, and they stopped at like issue 25 or something like that. And it was a great run. It was a really well done book.
yeah,
But yeah, she's always had yeah, and it's like so I keep waiting for a proper iteration of her in live action. I kind of hope that they would just kind of but they just haven't yet.
yeah. The other character that I find that is a lot of people love to draw, but if you actually read the comics, it's kind of meh, is Punisher.
Yeah, that's true. I liked it's kind of hit and miss. Sometimes it's sort of like yeah, but I like Punisher Soviet was a good little run. I didn't mind that. That was
Uh, it's
yeah,
one
nice little bit of
dimensional
violence in that.
character. It's one dimensional character. What more can you do with it? And but drawing them, yeah, I mean,
It's yeah, yeah. It's funny you mentioned that the one dimensional thing too. It's like I find it's like I don't know what it is. It's like I just whenever they announce like a new number one, right? Like they're announcing a new Moon Knight, and I'm like, okay, yeah,
Yeah,
here we go again.
yeah,
I don't know what it is. It's like, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think that's why I like how indie books, right? Because they're
yeah.
new stories, they're new characters. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, we all love Wolverine and all that, but it's like, sure, it's like when they announced the Batman Deadpool crossover. I'm like, sure, you
You know
know,
what? That only reason I'm interested in that is because I follow Greg Capullo on Instagram,
yeah,
and he posts his pencils, and it's like, that's the only reason I would buy that book, just because I've been
yeah,
following his artwork, and it's
yeah.
amazing seeing the process.
I love watching his process, right?
Yeah.
He's so great, man. And he's so like it's funny with him, he's so genuinely interested or genuinely happy to be doing what he's doing. You know what I mean? Like he's publicly appreciative of being in the situation that he is, like so he seems like a guy that just doesn't take it for granted. And he's so talented.
He doesn't seem like he has an ego, which is great.
No, and I love those guys. Like do you guys know Jeff Spokes?
Name
Uh,
sounds
So
familiar.
he's an artist for DC, and so anyway, he was the artist on the recently canceled Red Hood
Oh, yes,
series.
yes,
Right?
that's what I remember.
So
Okay.
I tabled next to him last year in Edmonton, and Jeff is like, he's the most soft-spoken, nicest guy ever. And I think they had to like talk him into coming to do a table. And he's just like, he goes, yeah, I just like hang out in my basement drawing all day kind of thing, right? And so he would show up, and it's funny because everyone's like setting up all these tables and banners and racks and stuff like that. He just shows up with his like portfolio book, punk, opens it up, and he just kind of brings he's working. Like he's just actually doing DC pages. So he's using his time properly, right? And so people are kind of coming up, and it's funny. It's like they're not talking with him; they're talking at him. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So they're just like they're showing their portfolio and all that. And he was, he greeted everybody, and he's whatever. But he's like working too, and yeah. So it was kind of neat watching him. Whatever. And this year in Edmonton, I was sitting next to Bobby Breed, and so he's got a Batman series coming up next year, and the way that he talks to people was just so genuine. Like he was just like he talked to everybody, and he had this one kid. He was 13, and he was an aspiring comic book artist, and he had a bazillion questions. Bobby talked to this kid for a good solid hour. Like he
Wow.
just laid everything out for him. Told
Imagine
him.
that 13-year-old. I mean,
No, you could just tell this kid was just
yeah.
exploding. And Bobby was talking about the advice that Jim Lee gave him, right? About studying anatomy and just whatever. And I was just like, I'm like sitting there, I'm like taking notes myself, right? I'm like, shit, okay. So
Come on,
yeah,
imagine three of us, like 13-year-olds going to a convention. And I mean, all of us have experienced rude artists and writers. And,
Mhm.
super nice people. So imagine a 13-year-old going, "Wow, this guy gave me all this advice."
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I remember when Calgary last year. So Todd McFarlane was there, and so he whatever doing what Todd does at these things, and then so the one guy who was co-running the expo, he's like, yeah, Todd wants to meet all the creators, so he's gonna come around to each table. I was like, holy shit, right? Todd McFarlane,
I
and
saw
so
your photo on that. Yes.
yeah, so there Todd shows up, right? There's the Todd father, and he's just like. He stopped at every creator table for like a couple of minutes just to so whatever. And I'm like, what do I say to him? What am I gonna say to him? And it's funny because at the time I submitted a book to Image for whatever, right? And of course it didn't happen. But I was in my head, I was gonna like say something like, hey, I'll see you at the staff barbecue, right? That was kind of my whatever. And so he finally comes up to me, he's like, oh, hey, my name's Todd, right? Kind of thing. And I'm like, hey, Mr. McFarland, I'm like, thank you for I'm like, thank you for saving the Oilers. Because like Tom Charlotte bought he was one of the buyers of the Edmonton Oilers before they, to keep them here and whatever. And he's like, oh, so whatever. Then he moved on. I'm like, shit. It was just the stupidest thing, right? But he was just the nicest man, like in his position. So sitting next to me was Nat Jones, and Nat Jones, he's based here in Edmonton, originally from the States. He did work on Spawn as well, and he worked with Todd, but he hasn't worked with Todd in years. And so Todd's like, oh, whatever, right? So it was just they kind of whatever. And banter, and Todd's like, you know what? We're gonna do something. We're gonna do something, right. We'll call you, kind of thing, right? So sure, shit, they did contact him a couple months later, and Nat did some, I don't know, there was some anthology or something that he contributed to, and so I think it's leading to like more work out of that. But Todd remembered him, right? And he's just like, let's get you some work, and so yeah, every nice story you hear with Todd McFarlane is probably true, right? Because he was just super nice.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
great
I
to
met
hear.
him a couple of
Because,
times, and
Yeah,
every single time, fantastic.
yeah, just gracious, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
but see, that's the worst part. A good part and bad part is, your idols. You grew up reading, watching, or listening to music and stuff. You're hoping they're not jerks. And I've had experience where I had as a teenager. I won't mention the artist. Loved his work.
Mhm.
Loved his work. When I met him, total jerk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And uh, on my shelf, I don't have any of his books anymore.
Yeah, that happens. There was one guy where, he just wouldn't lift his head up to like talk to whoever was talking to him,
Yeah.
right? I was like, guy, come on. It's just like, this is a privilege. Like, you should be able to, whatever, right?
I remember
Oh yeah.
years ago, this is going back and showing my age, early 90s, going to a bookstore on Queen Street, and Clive Barker was there. So I waited in line, I had his book, and I asked him, I go, can you do a sketch in the book? He goes, yeah. The guy who was organizing the thing, he goes, no, he can't do any sketches and stuff like that. Meanwhile, Clive Barker goes, no, I'll do sketches. And he ended up talking to me for 20 minutes.
That's right. Yeah,
And I'm
that's
like,
right.
more respect for you. I mean, he could have said no, and I still would have respected you signing my book. But he
Yeah.
was talking to everyone.
Yeah, my mom actually met Clive Barker and said too, he was just the nicest guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's
I met Chris Claremont once, and
Mm.
he was great, but he was as verbose as his comic books are. So it was. I brought a book to sign, and he started flipping through it and telling me about every detail of the comic book. And I'm sitting there, like by the end of it, I'm almost like, "Can I leave now?"
so now you know where he gets all the dialogue from his books and stuff.
It's him. It's 100%. I actually read his comic books now with his voice. So that's very.
So
So you mentioned you do a lot of shows, like
yeah, I was gonna ask that.
Well, I'm not doing like yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, like I was just gonna say, what shows are you doing, and what are you doing? Like, how are you setting up? Is it good for you? Is it fun? Do you have any
Yeah,
tips for
so
anybody?
Okay, so I'm doing like okay, so I've been doing Edmonton Expo, Fan Expo for the last couple of years, and I've just been doing Calgary Fan Expo the last few years, and then I did my first Montreal Comic Con this past summer. I'm gonna do it next year, and then I applied for like every Canadian Fan Expo for next year, so I'm hoping to like Toronto and Vancouver and all that. So I'm waiting, and then TCAF as well, that Toronto Comic and Arts Festival.
Yes.
I'm waiting for the application to open up for that because I really want to be there because of the independent scene. Um, so yeah, and then also there's a couple like local markets here in Edmonton that I like to do. There's one called Oddbird, and it's basically like this artisan kind of hipster type market where it's like you got people selling like illustrations and t-shirts and jewelry, and you know what I mean? It's just the market, right? Um, but I find like I'm usually like the only comic book guy there, and which is great because people I'm not really competing with anybody else, I guess, like for whatever. So I find that's actually a really good avenue if you're a comic book
That's
creator,
funny you
is to
mentioned that because
go somewhere, yeah, just go to like a local market, that's it's got a bit of a more youthful vibe to it, right? Because yeah, you're not trying to like you're not screaming along with like 50 other comic creators, right? Buy my book,
few
right?
years
So
back, few years back, we got invited to a show in Oshawa, Ontario called Convergence. It's a street festival.
yeah,
And one of the guys runs a store there. He invited us, and at first going, I don't, not sure about it because very little comic book. But down the street from us was a wrestling rink where we're having wrestling matches.
yeah,
On the other end, they had live music,
mhm,
and on the other hand, they had tattoo artists and things like that.
yeah,
We had amazing response
yeah.
because that's our audience.
Mhm.
People walking by who don't know what we do, walk by, oh wow, this is great. It's your audience, and you know what? You have to get the mindset away from comic fans.
Yeah.
Music fans and movie fans and wrestling fans are your fans.
You know what? It's so true. It's like I can't compete with like I mean like at fan expos and all that like like I did really well. Like a lot of us did really well at Edmonton Expo, right? But you are competing against established IPs, right? And people that are basically like creating product off of those IPs, right? So it is tough. Like it is tough when you're trying to sell something that no one's ever heard of or read or whatever, right? So that's kind of tough. But yeah, but these smaller markets, these obscure markets are just they're great because they're a lot of times like I always get the old, hey, I haven't bought a comic in so long, or
That's
I used to whatever, and
that's
it's like this is like their gateway back into it. And then, and I find too, it's like most of my like repeat or whatever readers are from those situations, right? Like they just like because they don't collect all these other better books, right? They collect your book and they kind of they sort of like it, right? So I know some people actually got back into buying comics, right? Because they just found me at a market and then just kind of it just sort of rejuvenated their interest in the in the medium.
oh,
That's
that's
cool.
great.
What kind of stuff do you do at the shows? Like, do you draw there? Do you have, like, what do you do to bring a crowd in, I would say,
Okay,
or
so it's funny. I used to when I first started doing shows and markets and all that, I would just like, I have my stuff, I have these racks and I'd be behind like this wall of racks and then I just be like down there just drawing, right? And just if someone comes by, I'm like, hey, how's it going? Kind of thing. But as I did more shows, I would just sort of like, I'd be situated next to certain people that, had really successful shows, and I would learn like, you got to stand up. You got to stand up. You got to
That's
be
it.
ready to go, and you got to like engage people as they come by and all that, right? Um, but I don't do a sales pitch. I will not do that. I will not, force someone to come to my table.
Yeah. As an
You know what I mean?
independent, you do
Yeah,
not
like,
have to.
and I've seen that too at shows where somebody would just keep blurting out the same line over and over again to hey you, do you like blah blah blah? Well, I got a blah blah blah, and you're like, oh, I'm hearing this all
You
day,
don't.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, so I wait. I kind of like hang out, chat with my neighbor a bit, right? Keep it loose, right? I always like to have a good rapport with my neighbor because you got a happy conversation, you're laughing all that, and I find it makes it more comfortable to people to approach your table because oh hey they're having a good time, right? You know, um, summer conversations a bit much, but anyway, so but I'll just kind of like people kind of whatever. I'm like, hey, how's it going, right? And like, oh, good, good. And I'll be like, hey, just flip through, check it out, right? And then, they start flipping. I'm like, then I kind of gave them the spiel, right, for the book. I'm like, hey, this book is such and such, whatever, right? And I always make sure I have my pitch down, right? And that's important too. Make sure you can explain your book right off the bat because you only got like 10 seconds really to like
Yeah.
right? So it's like with Jacoby, it always starts off with like, like, yeah, this is based off this guy named Jacoby. I kind of point to him on the cover. I'm like, he's a sliding thug based in Edmonton. He's doing light contract work. The story kicks off with him and his partner. They're in a botched heist and they blow up a school bus full of kids. I always get a laugh right out of that, right? And it's like these sick bastards, right? You know what I mean? It's like whatever. And they're like then I'm like, well then, then one of the parents basically snaps, goes on a whole revenge thing against Jacoby and his his cohorts. And then along the way, our second antagonist, Ula, shows up, and this thing culminates into a family drama, which ends into like a family tragedy. So it's a family tragedy story.
Just to let you know, years ago when you put the book out, that cover with him holding a cigarette, it's like, that's a bold move, and it worked because it was just like a striking cover.
Yeah, that was Dave Thomas who did that. So Dave Thomas is a artist here in Edmonton, and Dave is classically trained. This is so I followed Dave for the longest time, and Dave would do like proper shows, and he's a proper artist, right? Like and so I just emailed him, and we never met. I just sent him an Instagram message. I'm like, hey, I'm so and so. I got this project coming up. Do you want to do a comic book cover? Right? I thought he would ignore me, and he got back like the same day. He's like, I know you. I love your stuff. Yeah, for sure. Kind of thing. I'm like, okay, right? So we whatever talk blah blah. He gave me like this amazing deal, on the whatever. So he did the two covers on my Kickstarter for Jacoby, and then when I got signed with Scout, then he did the five covers, the main covers, and yeah. So it was just yeah, it just worked out with him.
That's very
So
cool.
now,
That's very cool.
mentioning your work, what tools or trades do you use? I know you said digital tablet. What kind of tablet?
Oh, I just a Wacom, just 24-inch tablet, and then I just draw, and I just do and just Photoshop, and so I just
And
do
what?
it.
Oh, Photoshop. Okay, I was
Yeah,
gonna say, do you use Procreate or any other?
yeah. No, I know. You know what? It's funny with Photoshop. Like, I remember when, like, this must have been 20 plus years ago at my old job. I wanted to kind of get into digital collage, and then but I didn't know how to use Photoshop. So a friend of mine gave me like a bootleg copy of like Photoshop 10. And so I would just and I just taught myself how to use Photoshop, and then I
Most
just
of
kind of
us.
stuck with it. And then when I was going to start drawing the comic, I'm like, oh, I got to do this digitally, and then I just taught myself how to digitally draw. I knew how to draw. Well, I kind of knew how to draw on paper, so that was kind of seamless, right? But what was funny is like it was learning how to not push hard on the pen. So my
Yeah.
first tablet, it looks like I just took just a brush to it, just a scratch pad to it, right? So it was just awful.
So did you go for the stage I did, where digital tablet after the first 4 months you want to throw that thing out the window?
I was no, you know what? I caught on pretty quick. Yeah, not too bad. So, but I first started off with a tablet that it was just the blank tablet, right? The small one, right? I didn't
Oh
have like the
yes,
screen,
yes.
right? So that was interesting. Yeah. So a lot of trial and error, and then but eventually you get to a point where you're just so comfortable with it now, right? So, but
Yeah,
I
now
try to do pencils. I try to like work with pencils just to kind of like, touch grass a bit, right?
and when you're doing your sketch covers and stuff like that, what
Yeah.
mark are you using? Markers, brushes?
No, I just use a dip pen in India ink. Yeah.
Okay.
Old school. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm like a step away from using a quill, really, So, yeah, I just like it's just like, because you don't know how the ink's going to come out sometimes, it's a little blotchy and all that. And, yeah, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, sort of unrelated. Recently, I went to an ostrich farm and they were selling feathers. And I looked at them and I thought,
Oh,
Can you imagine being at an expo, right? You're this drawing with a big ostrich feather, right? Just like so pretentious.
We were talking about this years ago, saying someone used a sumi brush to ink a book.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking,
Yeah,
why not? Why
that's
not?
true.
You know,
Why not? Why not, right? Try it. You never know,
oh, my
right?
my our friend of ours, Tom Yo, mentioned years ago. He read an interview with Joe Kubert, and he was saying Joe Kubert wanted to ink a page, and he goes, only thing he had a handy in front of him was a calligraphy pen,
Yeah.
and he used that to ink his story. It's like, you know what? It's not the tool, it's the artist.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah.
So speaking of art, why don't you we should probably wrap things up pretty soon, but I want you to tell us about what you're working on, what you've been doing, what you've got selling, and how people can contact you.
Okay, so currently I'm working on a book called Todd LeBon. This is the book that's gonna never end for me. So I'm usually so I think I'm gonna be hitting 60 pages. It's gonna be a one shot. It's a heist story that involves this main character Todd LeBon and his crew Johnny Yen and Toofer. Toofer is a talking two by four who only speaks in German. So I'm going to be German translating. So well, anyway, so they get hired to find
And
this.
people thought our comics are strange.
Yeah, this is yeah. So yeah, he's basically like this two by four, but he's got like he's wearing underwear, right? And eyebrows, right? So so they get hired to find this thing, this stone. I'm currently calling it the devil's testicle, but I'm gonna probably change it because I just like because I have to do I'm still working on my pitch. And it's one of those things where it's like I don't want to be at a con and I'm saying the word testicle about 1,000 times, right? And there's like kids there and all that. So I gotta rebrand that. Anyway, so I'm working on that. The Kickstarter is gonna probably be early January, February kind of thing. And then I got yeah, Calgary Expo coming up in April, and then Montreal Comic Con next summer. But yeah, you can find everything at Adrien Koleric,
We'll put
ADR.
the links down here.
Yeah. So Instagram is probably the best place to keep track.
So, Van, that brings up another request for you. When your Kickstarter comes on, we'd like you to come back on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if you'll have me. Yeah, no, thank you
Yeah, yeah,
very much.
definitely. We'd
Anyone
love
who has
to.
a talking two by four wearing an underwear, oh, anytime, anytime. Come on,
And
we have,
I love explaining this to my wife too, right? She's
yeah.
like, she wants this project to end because she's like, I don't understand what's happening. I don't care. Just she wants me to make like my last book, The Sitter, she loves, so she wants to make a sequel to it. She's like, just make Sitter too, because that's what people want. I'm like, I don't care. I don't want to do a sequel. So anyway, so yeah.
See, that's the problem. Don't mention your stories to your wife because you're always going to say you're not going to get positive feedback from it.
If the worse feedback, the more expressive reaction I get from her, like in terms of disappointment, the more I know I'm on the right track.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah.
Yes. No, that's great hearing your story, ideas and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, thanks very much for all this.
yeah. And well, thanks for being on the show. I think we should
Thank
probably wrap
you.
it up. So thanks for being on, and we definitely will want you on. We'd love to hear about how you do Kickstarter because that's something a lot of people are interested in. So maybe in a future episode when your Kickstarter is being
Yeah,
started, we'll have you on.
absolutely. Yeah, I would love to.